Freaky last stand. Ever ran out of orc on a tile you still wanted to hold? Good news. By support attacking a neighboring tile after you ran out of orc, you will never have to retreat until you run out of strength. The community calls this Freaky last stand, due to it working just like the actual last stand, only that it is an unintended feature and doesn't require command power. In HOI4 multiplayer, an air gamble is when the axis goes incredibly high on air in order to challenge the allied air superiority over D-Day. If it works and they manage to produce enough air, they usually win. If they don't win air despite investing a lot into it, they almost always lose. That's where the gamble part comes from. Critting is probably one of the most misunderstood terms in HOI4. Critting occurs when in combat, your unit has more attack than the enemy has defense. Every single attack point above their defense is now a crit and deals 4 times as much damage. Space Marines are infantry type units, including special forces like Marines that have a tank line battalion. People do this because adding one tank battalion boosts your armor value significantly, which makes your units a lot stronger in combat due to them not being pierced. Armored support companies, except super heavy tanks, typically do not counter Space Marines, as the armor value you can realistically produce over flame tanks or light tank recon is not enough to make piercing them difficult. What makes Space Marines so overpowered is called armor meme. An armor meme is any high armor battalion which intends to abuse the game's armor calculation, in which the battalion with the highest armor is vastly more important than the average battalion armor. I put this as a separate category because unlike Space Marines, armor memes are typically allowed in HOI4MP. For example, by armor mixing, which just means putting one high armor heavy tank into your heavy TD tank plate. If you ever read a HOI4 guide, you probably heard about tech juggling. It works in the following way. Let's say you want to research basic machine tools. You put one slot on it, the other one stays empty for 30 days. Now you swap your initial research slot off of the machine tools and then use the research slot with 30 days saved up to juggle. Congratulations, you just skipped 30 days in that research. Units can only join the combat until they fill out the combat width, and slightly beyond that, but that doesn't matter right now. Now once the combat width is filled up, your other units go into the reserve. If the enemy's units beat your units in combat, your reserve units have an hourly chance of taking up that previously filled combat width. If your enemy beats all of your units in combat before any of your units were lucky enough to reinforce, you just got reinforce memed and all of your units leave the tile. Order 66 is a recurring exploit in the HOI4 community in which you request military access and station units in another country's territory and then, in one way or the other, declare war on that country. Once the war starts, you take over all of the enemy's land and capitulate them basically automatically. The name is a reference to Order 66 in Star Wars, in which the clone troopers suddenly turn on the Jedis after receiving Order 66. Staxes and Stellis are just puns to cope about losing a game due to the enemy's faction, either allies or axis, being stacked with a lot more competent players than one's own faction. If you play modded HOI4, pre-grinds are generals that are made intentionally good from the game start, so you can avoid hours of clicking the same tiles in Spain over and over again just so you get the perfect trades. It also removes a lot of RNG due to not being dependent on getting the best attack upgrades. Boosting refers to an ally intentionally trading a lot with someone else in order to move factories from them into that of an ally who can use them more efficiently. A good example for this is the US trading a lot with the Soviets due to the Soviet mills being more efficient than the US mills. If you ever played HOI4, you'll notice that certain names have been established for different operations. The invasion of the UK is called Sea Lion, the invasion of the Soviets is called Barb, the invasion of the Nordics is called Weserübung, and the invasion of Japan is called Downfall. All of these stem from historical operation names, but there are also some operations which do not have historical names, like the US invasion, which is typically called High Castle due to the TV show with the same name. Flickering air is the name for quickly switching between air zones with planes. This is especially broken and frowned upon with bombing, which is then called flicker bombing. Because flicker bombing allows you to virtually always avoid your bombers being shot down due to the enemies always having to follow you into whatever air zone you move next. Which is basically impossible to micro, even if you have a dedicated air controller.